On episode 177 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet with Lamar Lowry and discuss his book, Functional Fitness. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/177. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Today we're going to meet Lamar Lowry. Lamar Lowry was serving in the U.S. military in the late 80s and decided to stay in Germany after his active duty. And in 2007, he founded Lamar Functional Fitness Training Academy. And he trains people on functional fitness and now has written a book that's initially intended for personal trainers, but is actually some really good information for just about anybody that's interested in functional fitness. The interesting thing is Lamar has spent many, many years in Germany, so it's kind of a fun conversation as he tries to remember some of the English words because he doesn't use English on a day-to-day basis. So this was kind of a fun conversation, but you're going to take a lot from Lamar. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do too. So with no further ado, here's Lamar Lowry. So Lamar, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your book. It's written for personal trainers, so it has a lot of the concepts that a personal trainer would be thinking through as they're working with their clients. But as a lot of people will know that have listened to this show, I became a personal trainer because I recognized that I needed to be my own personal trainer to make the changes in my life that I needed to make. And so for me, the love of knowledge, the love of what personal training does for people, it was there, but it was one of those things I didn't initially go in thinking I wanted to be a personal trainer for other people. I really just wanted to be my own personal trainer. And I think other people that are not looking to be a personal trainer can get a lot of value out of this book because, functional fitness is kind of one of those things that I think everybody should be striving for as a way they train. And while they might do, one modality and focus on that for a period of time, having the full functional fitness mindset as you go forward is really, really valuable. So I really did enjoy the concepts that you've put forward in the book.
Thank you.
So like I said, I think functional fitness is of one of those things like in life, we all want to do things. And we all want to be able to succeed in different things that are part of our life. And it might mean playing with your grandchildren or hiking in the woods or going to places where other people don't go and camping and doing those other active things. And so I like to talk to my clients. I say, we're all athletes. We all have to be athletes to live. It's just a function of we're not going to do it for 60 minutes and then quit. We keep living. And so in that, I think, having that functional fitness mindset is really valuable because it really does then take the application of the work you're doing and applies directly into the lifestyle you want to live. So let's talk about functional fitness a little bit here and how we define it and why we think it's valuable. I've shared a little bit of mine, but I'd like to hear from you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, the title of the book came from that wanting every general person to understand that fitness can be functional and not necessarily just traditional, which means the typical fitness studio agenda, which is not bad. But we want you to understand that if you want to learn how to move, just watch the next 2-year-old or 3-year-old and you'll know what I'm talking about. And this is what my understanding is of the concept and philosophy of the book. Functional fitness. And as you've read it, it goes into the central nervous system and the neurological system, the muscular system, which is one unit, and one without the other cannot function. And if I know that, which the readers will find out for themselves, then I also know that if I have those unique systems and they work uniquely together, then how can I separate them? How can I manipulate them like that without taking the time to keep giving them food of movement and food of feeling and rhythm of the movement that I'm having from my fingertips to my toes, because actually that's what's going on in functional fitness really. And everything between that is just a chain. And if I know that every movement is a chain of muscles and nerves and all of these wonderful gadgets that I possess, then I shouldn't have a problem understanding the book. you shouldn't have a problem understanding the exercise in the book and respecting the exercise in the book, and you should get some good results. People sometimes look at books too educational and too structured, and if you look at the way the book's drawn up, I wanted to tell the readers about how we're put together, general knowledge, and then that they place that knowledge that they've seen in the book into the movement, a type of thought that they are thinking about when they're moving, because a lot of people don't think about the brain as being a central nervous system. They just think of it as being a brain, but it's way more than that. And a lot of people don't think of the neurological system as being the telecommunication system of the human body. And this is a powerful unit, the nervous system. And once again, I mentioned muscular system, not muscle. And muscular system is just beautiful because of the chains of muscles that are linked together and how they perfectly work together. That's why I mentioned a 2-year-old or 3-year-old. If you see them, you see the massive beauty of movement. So, I just wanted to mention it like that.
Yeah. And what a lot of people are seeing when they're looking at a 2-year-old is they're looking at an individual that hasn't damaged themselves from a functional perspective. Whereas, sitting at a computer, hunched over your laptop or whatnot, those are all, when you stay in those movement patterns for extended periods of time, you end up with a movement dysfunction. And so one of the advantages of functional fitness is that it can help you restore some of the natural capacity that your body has from a movement pattern. But additionally, and I think this is one of the one of the hallmarks of all of this, and you went into it briefly, is our brain communicating with the muscles. If you're not using that on a regular basis, it kind of shuts off a little bit. And so, with a lot of new trainees, particularly that you and I would see, they see these great increases really early on in their process because the brain turns back on in the way that it communicates with those muscles. And it remembers some of that. Particularly if you were an athlete earlier in your life, but even if you weren't, the initial benefits that you're seeing is just that your brain now is better connected with your muscles and is able to operate them better. And I kind of equated, I bought this zero turn mower the other day. And when I got on the mower the first time, steering with 2 hands, forwards, backwards, turning, I wasn't really comfortable with it. And I think a lot of people can relate that the first time they got into an automobile to drive. They weren't really good at it. And then after practicing it for a while, you get better and better and better. And then you just get so comfortable that, you're doing a lot of things automatically that before you had to really think about. And so I think, again, that's one of the great advantages of functional fitness is it allows us to turn our brain on and get our muscles really back in tune with what's going on around us.
Exactly. I agree.
Okay. Now, I want to go a little bit into the how. And I know you've got dozens and dozens of exercises throughout the book, particularly, really deep dive into this whole field. And you've got some really cool toys in your studio there. Some I think I'm going to have to check out because I hadn't seen some of those before. And so I'm definitely going to have to do a little bit because I've got the club bells, I've got the kettlebells, I've got a lot of other things too. But I saw some toys in there I think I'm going to put on my Christmas list. But you don't have to have all of that because body weight movements in many cases are also very functional movements. But could you kind of go through how someone would generally think about, functional fitness and what it would mean?
Well, basically, as you said in our conversation prior to our recording, the basics. You must start at the basics, and it's very simple. You crawl before you walk. You stand up and you move without moving your legs. I'm going to just put it plain and simple. And you move everything in pairs, symmetric at your upper body. That way, when you start with the upper body moving symmetric, you won't do very much wrong. And then from that point, you look at your hips to your foot to see whether you're in an orderly start position. Okay. And we call that in German Ausgangsposition. And I think in American, you call that your, you got to help me here because I've been in Germany for 38 years. 28 years. So sometimes I forget words in English.
Yeah, I think that's just going to be your posture, how you're lined up.
Yeah, so you want to make sure you get that correct. Once you get that, you want to get your basic push and pull movements down. And they should be always started symmetrically. And in the book, you'll see me do that in that area as a basic step. But also you'll see me do basic body positions like the pronation, so push up or pronation position, which means you can start on your knees and on your hands, okay? And you can take the time to learn what it feels like to be on your knees and your hands and walk your hands to the front, keep your shoulders over your hand. And then you'll learn to go into a level arm in a push-up position. Once you learn how to do all that, you just turn over into the supination position and learn how to lay on your back and keep your legs bent and your feet on the floor, that you can keep your pelvis pushed to the floor. These are basic understandings of prime, easy movements, because you don't want to start to do other things until you get that down. You need to be able to get your push-up position, that you can trust yourself in that pronation position. You need to get your supination position, your laying position, laying down position, that you keep your lower pelvis, your lower back on the floor. And when you stand up, you don't need to be standing up and pushing, if you can't keep your lower back straight. It's just that simple. But that doesn't mean standing up like you got a 2x4 nailed to your head and nailed to your hip. No, you got to learn what it feels like by testing it. And you just stand still and move your pelvis to the front and to the back. And a lot of people don't even know what that means. Okay, but that's fine. You can learn when you read the book. But you just got to be very careful about, when you're talking about basic movements, that we have to really keep it basic. Because once you learn the basic of movement symmetrically and keeping your feet shoulder width apart and learning what that soft knee and that hips to the back slightly with that pelvis tilted to the back, you'll find that you'll feel your lower back when you stand up. And for most people, it might hurt because it's been so much in that lordosis, that we call it in German Pferdrücken. That means the horseback. Okay, and most people can identify with that. If you know what a horseback looks like, got a sink in it, that's what your lower back looks like if you don't train and you don't learn how to do pelvis exercises. Okay, that's what you don't want. So what you do by that, you can have a natural one. Yes, you can. But you have to remember, you have to learn to control it. And the next thing is, if I may go on for the basics, is the psoas muscle. Okay, that's in the front, the ventral of the body, which means most people think your stomach area. Well, guess what? If you don't have that muscle prepared to move, it will probably cause you back pain because it's not long and strong like it should be, because it's shortened, and it's not breathing because we sit down so much. And that muscle is shortened when we stand up. Some of us have back pain because the psoas muscle is so short and so tight, we can't even move without back pain. And we think that we have a back problem. Well, we don't. We have a shortened psoas muscle. So that being said, basically, I think that kind of covers roughly some of the basics.
Yeah. And, I like some of the concepts you kind of got into there. And when you were talking about, being in the prone position and then the supine position, those are all things, if you watch a child, they're in that position all the time. Babies in that position starting their lives as they're building their fitness foundation. They're building their future athletic body that's going to be able to walk and run and do all the other things. That's a building that they start with. That's their foundation as well. And I can tell someone, if you've ever tried to do the self-myofascial release, you'll put a lacrosse ball on that psoas and you'll press down. It almost feels like your appendix is about to rupture, because it's extremely painful the first couple times you do it until the psoas starts to release and you actually start feeling it. And after you, like you said, after you've done that a few times and you've got that muscle to lengthen and get back to where it's supposed to be, you're not going to have as much back pain for sure, but you're going to have just a lot more general mobility in your hips, and you'll feel it in your legs all the way through your system. Because again, as you said earlier, we're a chain of muscles and joints, and just getting one of them worked out to a position where it's healthier affects the entire chain. So it's that is extremely valuable. Thank you for sharing that. Now, in the book, you have the 4 pillars of human movement, and I really liked these because I think they, in essence, kind of put this all into a framework that it makes it very easy for someone to understand how to approach this. I mean, obviously, they want to start at the beginning, as you mentioned, and once they've gotten started, kind of understanding these 4 pillars of human movement are going to give them kind of the foundation to build on. So could you take a few minutes and go through the 4 pillars?
Sure. The 4 pillars of human movement is locomotion, which is standing and moving. And that's one that everybody does all day long if they get up eventually and go to the bathroom if they're working. So that's a general simple one. I just want to go back to the book so I don't make any mistakes, because sometimes I say them differently sometimes. Then you have the core area of the body, which means I call it the shoulder to the knee. the core, not the shoulder to the pelvis. Because why? Because if you look at the human body, how it's designed, your core does not stop at your hips. It stops at your knees. Okay? So let us make sure we understand that, because if I'm doing a movement, it's not coming from my shoulder to my hip, because if you look at the psoas muscle, it's not stopping at the hip. Okay, it's going to the thigh area. If you look at the thigh muscles, they're crossing some of them over to the hip, over the hip joint. So that's why you got to be careful with that, because you got a lot of fascia tissue that is connecting all this stuff that's running all over the body like a spider web. So that's why when I say the second pillar of human movement is, we call it here Ebenwechsel in German. I got to keep looking at my English words, make sure I don't say it wrong. And you're flexing to the front, you're hyperextending to the back, you're lateral flexing to the left, lateral flexing to the right. You're doing a slight diagonal move and stretching your body. You're stretching your body to the front. You're not really using your knees. So that's what we call a reach or a stretch or whatever you want to call it. So that's why that second pillar is called the core area of moving it into flexion or extension. Then you have the third pillar, which is pushing and pulling, something that we do all day. If we're moving a mouse, we're pushing it and pulling it and moving around. Or if we're giving someone a hello, shaking their hand or opening a door and closing it, or opening a car door and closing, or drinking water, or whatever. We're doing pushing and pulling the whole day, okay? So then you got the last one we have here, which is rotation and diagonal movements. And, you know, at the end of the day, everything that I do is rotation, because if I'm moving my arms. Even some people don't look like they're moving their arms when they walk. They are. Just barely, some of them, you know. So, and that's something we want to remember when we're moving. We want to keep those arms swinging so we can activate that core to the shoulder to the knee like a big diagonal line, you know, so that we can keep that body moving with the muscles activated in the upper body along with the lower extremity areas.
Yeah, and that one's one that I think for my age group really does seem to matter the most, is because we tend to move very linear most of the time. And so that we start losing some of the capacity to manage that torque and that rotation. And so that's, again, when a lot of people fall, when they're older, they're falling because they've lost their balance, because they can't maintain the torque of what happened when they moved their body, or they're injuring their lower back. You know, when they pick up a bag of groceries and twist to put it on the counter, those movements, those torque and rotational type movements are where a lot of people really hurt themselves as we get older, because we haven't done enough to maintain those from a stable position.
Right. Not only that, Alan, you got to look at your hips, because your hips are one of the strongest areas in the body. I would think the most strongest, I'm going to go a little out of line and say the jaw. It's probably the strongest one in the body, although they say the hips are. But I'm going to say the jaw is the strongest one, the jaw muscles. But let's go back to the hips. People that walk like a penguin don't use their hips, okay? All you got to do is look at the fat people. I'm not being judgmental. Please don't misunderstand that, okay? Or look at the people that are getting old and want to get their mom and dad a walker, okay, and let them use a walker to walk. And what they're doing, they're not using their hips anymore, okay? What you got to do, you know, if you need to use your hips, you got to start sitting down and standing up. I don't care how old you are. Use your hands. If you got to get a sling or something, and use it to get up and sit down until you get enough strength to sit your butt down and get up. And that you do all day long, because eventually you got to get up to go get something to eat. You got to get up to go to the bathroom. You got to get up to do something and sit back down again. So in other words, if you do 25 sit-ups and sit-downs in the chair in the morning, 25 at 12 o'clock, 25 in the evening supper, and 25 before you get into bed, that's 100 a day. If you do 100 times 30, that's 3,000 if I'm not missing the point, right? So if you do 3,000 times 12, how much is that?
That is 360,000.
That's how many squats you can do in a year if you just get off your lazy behind and just do that. You don't have to be a professional athlete to do that. You can do that anywhere. And this is what I'm trying to say. People don't even realize how simple it is to strengthen your hips. Just strengthen your hips that you can walk normal, as you just said, because these are muscles that we need to be able to do different things, the turning, the rotational mass, the activity of the rotation, the diagonal movement. But once again, the core of that is the hip, because if I can get that hip strong, I can sit down and get up. And if I can get those arms to swinging, When I start moving around a little bit, then that's already enough for the basic human being.
Yeah, you'll be interested to know. This is going to air in November, and November is squat month, squat challenge month here at 40 Plus Fitness. So I've got groups going through squat challenges as we speak. Each day trying to get their squats in for that day. That workout for the day is just a bunch of squats. And I tell them, yes, just spread it out over the day. It won't be nearly as onerous as when you're just looking at the raw number. But they add up really quickly. If you're just doing a few here and a few there, they do add up very quickly. And you're right. This is a fundamental movement of our bodies that we always need to be able to do as a full range of motion squat. So I do appreciate your sit down, sit up example, because it is something we can do supported or otherwise, depending on our current fitness level. But the squat is fundamental to movement patterns that humans have to do every day.
That's right.
Okay. Now, you have obviously gone through this book and kind of set this up in a way that people can apply it to build on everything that's going. But you have kind of a path that you've set for us as we kind of go through this to get that functional performance. Can you kind of go over the functional path to better performance?
Okay, what I did when I started the exercises out, I started with basic steps because I wanted the people to get the understanding of that. And also I gave muscle clarification and I gave a clarification of how to do the exercise. I think by writing the book this way, even if you're not a personal trainer or a physical therapist, you can still understand what you're doing and you know which muscles are being used. I mean, of course, there are more muscles than I wrote, but the primary and secondary muscles that are being used, you'll know what's going on. So the next thing that I did as far as the exercise is concerned, I didn't make the exercises too complicated in the beginning because of the basic steps. Then once I got into about the first 10 exercises, you'll notice that I started changing the position of the body more. Well, actually, it wasn't even that many exercises because I'm looking in the book right now. And I started out in the pronation position in the first exercise, if you look at it, with the stability ball. And then I went from the stability ball to the floor because I wanted to activate those muscles in the multifida. That means those are the muscles in the deep muscles in the back, which we all normally don't train if we do traditional exercises, okay? So if you look at the exercise in the book, it makes everything simple as far as moving on the floor in the pronation position. And I'm still laying down as I go into the book even further because that makes it easier to get to activate the back muscles in the body and the deep ones too. Then after I get to a certain point in the book, it was about the 6th exercise, I started to sit down. And after I sat down, I started to flex and extend with a medicine ball behind my head. And as I go forth, I started to put up my leg on a stool and I started to do the shoulder. So I started activating more muscles in the chain coming away from the back as I proceeded. And if you go on further, you'll see that I progressed into the Schulterblätter. Yeah, that's, what do you call that? Like I said, guys, don't panic, but I've been over in Germany a long time.
It's the push and pull.
Yeah, but it's a push and pull exercise. But if I activated the trapezius and also the, what do you guys call that?
The rhombus?
The muscles. No, not the rhomboids.
No.
It's a bone that's not connected to muscles. It's behind the right beside
scapula. The scapula?
Yeah, the scapula. That's what you guys call it in English. The scapula. I'm still American. So those are some of the things that you see me activate as you go into the book. And then I went into the shoulder, into the in and rotation and also in and rotation and outer rotation. And then after that, you'll see me lay down on my back. And that's when I started to go into push and pull, okay, or pushing or pulling basically from the laying position, the supination position. And then eventually I kept progressing into pull-ups, which doesn't have to be done the way that I did it. You can also do it with super bands under your feet. And I also did some rowing, of course, for the back again. So you'll see that I did different positions to train the back muscles, which was the main objective in the book for the first 25, 30 exercises to do the back muscles and the upper body muscles, put it like that. So we were trying to stay focused on upper body. And then eventually I went further in to the book. And then you'll see me starting to put in some squats and some rotation with squats. And it took about 20 exercises before I got to that point. And then I loaded the exercise with rubber bands, with aerobic bars. And then so it just went on. And eventually in the book, you'll see me start getting complex with the exercises where you don't see any more muscles being clarified. That's when the exercises get really fun because at this time, I changed the speed of the exercises. I changed the whole stuff going more into asymmetric. And I changed also the complex movement, adding the foot and the arm and the turning and the bending all together as one movement, okay? Which is what we should be doing anyway, but some people can't do that in the beginning.
Right. And I think that's what I really enjoyed about this was that it did have that, let's build some dexterity, then let's start building some strength. And then we can really start working on all of the other modalities, but we don't have to just say today's a strength training episode or today's a cardiovascular episode, because the reality is once you get to that back part of the workouts, when you're really doing those more complex movements, is your heart rate's elevated, you're building really good core strength, you're building really good body strength to different parts of your muscles. And then again, you're just continuing to improve your dexterity. And it's kind of interesting because there's a gentleman that's a member of our Facebook group, and he's occasionally posting some of his workouts that his trainer has him doing, very similar to what you have here in the book. And I'm watching some of them and I'm like, it takes a very fit person to get to that point. But the cool thing of it is if you kind of start from the beginning of this and start adding those exercises and working towards that progression, anyone's capable of doing it, which is really awesome.
That's true, Alan. I agree.
So if someone wanted to get in touch with you and get a copy of the book, where would you like for me to send them?
Well, they can go to, I think they got two possibilities. If you don't mind me saying this, I don't know if this is the right thing to do, but Thomas already told me the ESBN number. And when you got that number, you can get the book sent to you probably over you or Thomas, if I may say that. Because the thing is, I'll be in the States in December, middle December to the end of January in Florida. And by this time, we'll know exactly where. But in the meantime, you can get it if you want it from Amazon, but it won't be in America until January. If I'm not mistaken. But you can get the book from me directly, but that's too complicated because I'm still in Germany.
Well, I'll tell you what, I will keep an eye out for it. Maybe they can pre-order it on Amazon. I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes for this. And this is going to be episode 177. So you can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/177. And I'll make sure that when it's available that there is a link to the book.
It will be very soon too.
Okay, cool. And what part of Florida are you coming to?
I'm coming to West Palm Beach. That's where my home is. I have a home there. And what happens, for all the readers out there, I think I should mention this because this is a part of the lifestyle that I lead. And I come home for 2 months vacation at one shot, but therefore I work 10 months straight, 7 days a week. So, I'm not saying it's the healthiest way to live a lifestyle, but it's one that I've developed to have. And, being 50 years old, try it and you'll see that it's not really the wise way to do things. But at the same time, I've trained myself to do that because of the eating habits, sleeping habits, knowing when time to have fun, knowing what things really do me well, and I activate those things. So it gives me energy. And also respecting what my body says on a daily basis because it's never saying the same thing on a daily basis. And if I know that, because I've spent so many years with my own body and listening to it and training it and respecting it and making decisions that I learned from that weren't wise ones. And all that put together in a soup, I realize now today you can really bring endurance in your lifestyle. You can, but you have to listen to not just your body, but your spirit too. You know what I mean? And you have to listen to all that, but you have to be disciplined enough to train yourself to even understand all that. And that takes time. It takes a lifetime. And as you said, Alan, and I agree with all that, but this is the thing that a lot of people misinterpret. They think that if you get the 6-pack or the 8-pack and get the tight glutes, well, that's good. Well, no, it's not. That's nice. But, I want to be able to play with my grandchild too. I have a granddaughter. And I want to be able to play with her until I die, because, this is a blessing. If you can't even pick them up, you can't even go with them for a walk or maybe take them to the fairground or something when the fairground comes to town. You're missing out so much on life because we're all at the age now, whether we got grandkids or they're coming. Okay. And that's a beautiful thing. And I'm telling you, because I have a granddaughter. And I know what it feels like when I see her and she's just full of life and she wants to play. She don't want to sit down and watch TV. She want to play. So what does that mean? I got to get up and play with her. and do things with it.
Well, Lamar, it sounds like you have another book in you somewhere, because I can hear your passion, particularly when you're talking about your granddaughter. But thank you so much for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it, and I hope we'll get out and get this book, because it's something I know I'm going to look back on as I'm building my programs for myself, just to make sure that and I'm going to try out some of those cool toys that you've got in your studio if I can lay my hands on them here in the United States. But thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate having you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Like me, Lamar really has a passion for physical fitness and health. And both of us are reaching out and trying to help as many people as we can. Him with his book and me with this podcast. And I'm going to ask you for a favor and ask that you share this podcast with a friend or family member, because again, we can't help people unless they know we're there. And so that's part of the reason why I bring authors on, is so you can hear about their great books, to learn more about your health and fitness, particularly functional fitness with Lamar now. That's that's a very important topic. But share this with your friends and family so they'll learn about the podcast and an opportunity for them to learn more about health and fitness. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, I share my best weight loss lessons learned. Until then, have a happy and healthy day.